Well, good morning, Lionhearts. It's Daze with Jordan the Lion once again. Every day that you wake up, I'm sitting here waiting for you to hit press play. It's going to be a great day. I have to work later today, but what I'm going to do is I decided, since I used to live in the neighborhood that Ed Wood lived in and all of Ed Wood's favorite spots are there, I'm going to do a vlog on Ed Wood today. Ed Wood is kind of customarily known as maybe the creator of the worst film of all time, which I would argue. If you've ever seen Game of Death, I would argue that Game of Death is probably worse, but Plan 9 from Outer Space was Ed Wood's baby. And Ed Wood had this really bizarre sense of making movies. He wanted to make a real artistic expression and a real production, but he really had no money, no talented actors, and no real knowledge of how to make a movie as a director. That didn't stop him. He made a handful of movies and threw literally his own life into every single one of them. And we're going to go and explore some of those haunts today. So if you don't know who Ed Wood is, if you didn't see the Johnny Depp, Martin Landau movie made by Tim Burton years ago called Ed Wood, today will be your introduction to the man, the myth, the legend, the guy who's known as the creator of the worst movie of all time, Plan 9 from Outer Space. I'm going to hop in the shower, drink my coffee. We're going to see if we can find John that mess of bedding over there, and we're going to go out and have some fun. Daze with Jordan the Lion begins now. Oh, yeah. Beautiful. Oh, by the way, guys, I have to work today at 5:30 on the Universal Studios lot. Not Universal Studios, the theme park, but Universal. So maybe I'll get lucky and I'll be able to get some footage on the lot. Maybe we'll be working over there where they film some of the later seasons, Town Square of Dukes of Hazzard, something. Just in case you were wondering, he's here. He's here. Whose nose is that? Hi! What's up, my buddy? Now, right up here in this set of offices is where our boy Edward D. Wood Jr. had his business offices when he was finishing up and working on Bride of the Monster, and when he was working on Plan 9 from Outer Space. This was also one of those buildings that his landlord, I believe, owned the property and rented to them at a really reasonable rate because they were getting involved in the movie industry and they were helping finance Plan 9, which, as we know, was originally called Grave Robbers from Outer Space. And they were also supposed to fund what would have been his last epic movie called The Ghoul Goes West, and it was supposed to star Bela Lugosi, but Bela Lugosi, of course, didn't live long enough to make it. But that was kind of a historic movie, at least for Ed, because before Bela had died, while Bela was in the hospital getting cured off of the morphine addiction, Gene Autry had actually said that he would be in this movie, and as long as Bela Lugosi was the star, the horror star of it. And then as soon as, or at least the story goes, as soon as Gene Autry read the script, he politely withdrew himself from the offer. But this was Ed's office, this upstairs. And it can be yours now for lease. And this would have been Ed Wood's doorway up to his office. If you were just curious, if you wanted to see. That was probably the original stained glass window. It's pretty old. Well, since I was up early and I hit the furthest place away from my apartment already, I decided to come back, take Jaw out for a trip to the park, and then I'm going to go show you Ed Wood's smoke shop, his liquor store, and his apartment, where he was also manager of the apartment building. Twisty, turny path of getting Jaw to his favorite park. You almost have to have a 4x4 to do it. Well, we are out at the park, and it's pretty empty out here, surprisingly. Usually this is like the time when everybody's out here, but nobody today. So this ought to be a fun vlog today. Like I said, I used to really be into Ed Wood, and when I was into him the most, while I was you know, even then, I guess this would have been 10 years ago, I lived in that neighborhood, and that was actually the apartment I would consider to be, like, if somebody were doing a documentary on me, that would be one of the main ones you would want to research, because that was where I was writing a ton of poetry there. I had like 2 full books worth of poetry. I wrote most all of my songs there, developed pretty much my whole philosophy on life and everything that I'm interested in. I really explored it and got into it there. And I was watching a documentary one day, and it was with a lot of the people from Ed Wood's life, people that were helping him make those movies back then, and they were walking around my neighborhood, and all the places they were showing were places that I was going to. When I was a cigarette smoker, the place that I bought my cigarettes from, one day I wore my Plan 9 from Outer Space shirt in there, and the guy was older than Jesus that worked behind the counter, and he looks at my shirt and he goes, "Eddie used to buy cigarettes here. He used to buy from me." And I was like, oh my gosh. He told me he used to go in there with Bela Lugosi. So you can imagine how old this guy was. The guy looked like he was like in his 80s when I was going there. So anyway, I'll tell you more when we get over there. Totally barren park. Completely barren. Other than us. Kind of defeats the purpose of coming out here. I'm trying to give him some playtime since I have to go work later. A little possible. I almost don't even want to say anything because I know if I say something, then something will make sure it doesn't happen. But remember the girl I told you guys about last week that I met, that I was excited to meet and everything. I thought she was so cool. We've been talking every once in a while since then, and we might get to hang out tomorrow. We're gonna see how our schedules work out. We just haven't had like pretty much the same free days lately, but she sent me a message yesterday saying that she wishes she would have known I was going to Watts Towers because she really wants to see it and really wanted to go. So she's definitely into the same cool stuff that I am. So hopefully maybe you'll get to meet her on the vlog. I don't know. I'm out walking over to Ed Wood's apartment, and I just stopped, and I love the architecture of this church. Everything from like the lamp posts and everything beside it. Now this apartment is actually pretty special because unless I'm mistaken, from everything that I was able to find, this was his apartment from like the early 50s until somewhere in the mid to late 70s when he got evicted from it. And as many low points as Ed would have in his life, his wife said this was like the lowest of the low. She said when he lost the apartment, that was pretty much the end of him trying. And this is the info for that church I just showed you guys. Now this is the place that... Random shoe. This is the place that he lived with Dolores Fuller, who was his main girlfriend for, I think, 4 years. And they kind of lived in sin, I guess you would say. I don't know what the other word for it is when they... But it was not, I guess it was frowned upon to live together when you weren't married, so he told everybody they were married. And it was about a year into living here together that she discovered that he was a transvestite. He wasn't homosexual, he just liked women dressing in women's clothing. And from what they said, where that came about was his mom always wanted a girl, never had a girl, and she had a big, huge doll collection. And at some point in his life, just started dressing him up like a doll. And so later on in life, when he was in the military in the war, he was praying that he would, if anything were to happen to him in battle, that he would die and not get wounded, because he said if he died, they wouldn't take your clothes off you, but if you got wounded, they would. And he was wearing bra and panties under his fatigues. So, but she said that, Dolores Fuller said that basically she said, I didn't think anything was that off at first because he would ask me if he could borrow my Angora sweater. And she said, in fact, when I met him, it was an audition. He was auditioning actresses, and I wore an Angora sweater. And by the end of the meeting, or like the audition, he was promising to make me a star. And she said, I think it was just because of the sweater. So he would ask her if he could wear her sweater because he was writing a part for a woman, and he said it would help him get into the part. And then she said eventually he came clean. He had to, because there was a producer out there, and this producer wanted to make the Christine Jorgensen story, which was one of the first women to ever have a sex change operation. And Ed Wood convinced this guy, I think his name was George Weiss, to let him write it and direct it and make the movie, low budget. And this guy just turned out movies quickly, so he didn't really put up too much of a fight and let him do it. So instead of making the Christine Jorgensen story or something similar, what Ed actually did was he made his story. And it was called Glenn or Glenda. And it was about this man living in hiding because he liked to wear women's clothing. And that's kind of how Dolores found out about it. Even though his movies weren't technically made well, he had to make them fast because he had almost no budget, and he was basically pulling favors or stealing / borrowing stuff from other studios to get these movies made. And so you would see he would mix match stock footage, stuff that didn't make sense. You would see microphone shadows in the shots, because he was just like, they get the idea. Let's just move on. We don't have time to reshoot it. Sometimes even a lot of those movies, they were done in 1 or 2 takes. But he did, to his credit, always make Dolores the kind of the lead to those movies in the times for the years that they were together, until he was trying to make Bride of the Monster, and he was looking for an investor, and he overheard a woman saying that she had money in a bar, started talking to her, gave her the script to get her to invest, and she decided she wanted Dolores' part. So to get her money, he gave away Dolores' part to this woman, and then gave Dolores a walk-on. Surprisingly, she didn't leave him then. But when they started filming, he found out that the woman didn't really have any more money than that one initial deposit she gave him. So pretty crazy. The final straw for Dolores, she said, was it was at the premiere, or their like kind of wrap party for Bride of the Monster. So all of a sudden Ed disappeared into the women's bathroom, comes out wearing his Shirley outfit, which was a blonde wig, and that was his alter ego persona, and started doing a hula dance or some sort of dance like that. And she just said that was it. She said our deal was that he had to keep it between us, and when he made it known to everybody else, I was out of there. Dolores Fuller would eventually go on to write 17 hit songs for Elvis Presley. And true to fashion, pretty much everybody, once they got away from Ed Wood, they all became successful in their own right. This building here, completely covered in ivy now, was Ed Wood's apartment building for over 20 years. That's where he wrote every script, everything that he was living through, all the hardcore drinking was right there in that apartment. And to his credit, if nothing else came out of the legacy of Ed Wood, he did give Bela Lugosi a second chance to the film industry. See, Bela Lugosi had pretty much been completely forgotten and shunned and put aside at the time. And Ed met him and asked him to do a kind of a part, very brief one-day scene in Glenn or Glenda. Bela turned it down, but he was in such dire need for money that his wife talked him into doing it for $500. And kind of gave Bela a little bit of something to live for again. He was a methadone addict, and this gave him the opportunity to eventually go in and work on kicking the habit. And yeah, God, just to think, Ed Wood lived there. Now, he basically made horror sci-fi pictures, but Plan 9, the one that's considered like the worst movie of all time, it was a weird exception because it was a horror science fiction movie that really had no horror and it really had no science fiction. And the story didn't really make sense, but there was something about it that was worth watching. I actually one day wandered over, I found out where that studio was where they recorded it, and I was out front and accidentally met the guy who, I don't know if he owns that building or if he manages it, but he actually like took me in. And now it's like, or at the time it was rehearsal spaces for bands to rent out by the hour or by the day or however you wanted to do it. And he walked me in. It was basically all just painted black walls, and he said those were the original, that's the way it was back then. But they had put carpet down and whatnot, so. Yeah, Ed Wood made, like I said, he had this vision of these crazy movies that he wanted to make, and even once it was pretty apparent that even when he was making the sci-fi pictures, he was making sci-fi pictures that kind of would go over 10 years before. He was always just kind of behind the times almost in a way. And then later on, you know, people would find his movies and they would become cult classics in like old revival theater houses, and famous directors would say that they love those movies and that they like things about them. I mean, Plan 9, one of the things that people are real critical about is that he, before Bela Lugosi died, he filmed one reel of tape of him out in front of a house kind of sniffing a flower, and then tried to build an entire movie around it. And he got his chiropractor, who had kind of a resembling hairline, to just walk around with a cape over his face every time he was in the movie. It was just bizarre, but like I said, totally worth seeing. And this was where basically Ed Wood, all of his creativity was based out of for all the years, from basically before Glenn or Glenda, if you know his history, through Jailbait, through Night of the Ghouls, through Plan 9, through Bride of the Monster. And eventually he would, towards the end of his life, just end up falling into making basically pornography, like orgy films, and then he finally tried to cross over and do an orgy horror picture, Night of the Orgy. It was just, at that point he was just grasping for straws and he'd given up. And like his wife Kathy said, once they got evicted from here, and he had all of his memorabilia, all the posters from things he had done, all over the walls here. They threw out all of his posters off the walls, all of his belongings, all of his memorabilia just went into the trash dumpster right over here off to the side, up right at that little driveway. And yeah, just a sad end to a man's dream. Just past this light, there's a brief little block of about 3 or 4 stores. Right on the corner was a place called Playboy or Plawboy. It's basically Playboy without the Y. Liquor. And that's been here since the 30s or even the 20s, I believe. And in the documentary, they said that's where he would walk from here over there to buy his booze. So I'm gonna walk over and show you that. Since basically, in the end, he just drank himself completely to death. Even the last orgy pictures that he was making, when he would be in them, you could tell he was 20 or 30 pounds heavier, bloated looking. This over here was my old neighborhood. I used to pretty much do all my shopping either at this CVS, except when I lived here, it was a Save-On before that. I used to eat at the Chinese place that was right over there. I used to go to that market. I used to do my laundry over here at this laundromat. I wasn't, you know what, actually, I was a little bit of a drinker when I lived over here, so, but I bought all that at Save-On. If you were ever curious when I was a drinker, what it was that I drank, it was pretty much, I was pretty much a Jack and Coke or Black Velvet and Coke kind of guy. Sometimes a White Russian because I like the Big Lebowski. But there's Playboy Liquor. And that was, you know, like I said, that was Ed Wood's liquor store. Then we're gonna go down here and we're gonna walk further down Wilcox. I actually live up the other direction, or I used to live up there, you guys know. Someday I'll go through and I'll show you guys all my old apartments in case you're ever interested. We're gonna walk down here to Hollywood Boulevard, and as soon as you get down here to Hollywood, you make an immediate left, and there used to be a cigarette store there, smoke shop. Doesn't all the work on the out front of this. It just looks like the perfect setting for like a Buster Keaton movie where he would be climbing up through all those, getting lost, trying to get away from a cop or something. Actually doing it to the other side too. Jeez. That actually looks like a pretty cool vegan place. I haven't been there since it became that. It used to be a Thai place when I lived over here. I don't know what's going on over here. When I lived over here, these were all businesses. There was like a diner kind of cafe place here. There was a Thai place on the corner. Right up above here where this metal grate one is, used to be a shoe repair. That's where I used to take all my pants and stuff when I'd split my pants or had shoes I needed cobbling. Now we're gonna make that left. And the cigarette store was right up here. Well, it was actually right here where this little grate is. It doesn't even look like it's big enough to be a store, but it was like a half walkway and half store. Just basically just a counter in there. And it was this old, like 90-year-old man who worked in there, and he actually had a picture of Bela Lugosi signed. And that's, like I said, when I wore the Plan 9 from Outer Space shirt in there one day, he's like, "Oh, Eddie." But I don't know if they closed down because the old man died, or all the businesses that were ever over here when I lived here have all been closed down, so I bet they're trying to get everybody to get out of here so they can sell the building at some point. But this was, it was an old time smoke shop. I mean old time. Everything in it was like wood paneled, and it was just, it was cool. Plus it was the only place when I was a smoker. I was an on again, off again smoker for years of my life. I would always come here because they would sell 2 packs for $5, which was almost, it was weird how they could do it. It was always like a buy one, get one free deal kind of thing. And it was like the only place, and they were the nicest, and they were always open, so this was my place. But now, pretty much Ed Wood's world was right here in this 1 block radius. And you know what's funny? That happens to a lot of people that become hardcore drinkers. Bukowski got that way. When I was looking up all the places that Bukowski hung out, remember, it was like pretty much everything was in a block or 2 of each other. You just get that whole almost fear of getting out of your comfort zone kind of thing. That's partially why I like to walk everywhere. I don't care almost in a lot of ways how far it is. When I used to go to the Comedy Store all the time, I'd walk all the way there, and that was like over 4 miles each way. And I would just do it because I'm like, I just want to get out and see things, you know, that you can't see by car. I like that the truck cap that he put on there didn't quite fit and he didn't care. Classic. This old Mercedes. It's pretty cool. The interior is like amazing. Wow. That is awesome. That is awesome. Whoever drives this eats it Baja Fresh. I can't imagine why though. Man, classic. That should be in the Nethercut Museum. All right, we got some mail. Got some good mail and some bad mail. Good mail is Nick and Jonna sent me and Josh some treats. And even some bracelets and rosary, which is pretty cool. Appreciate that. So nice of you guys. I can't wait to try out this coffee too. You were telling me that it was really great coffee, so thank you so much. Now the bad news is that I never got a call about my MRI, and all of a sudden in the mail I got an approval for my hand to be operated on. So it looks like they have decided that I have a tumor, so I guess I will be having a hand operation here. It already made it on my wrist. If you're curious at all about Ed Wood after seeing this and you don't know anything about him, I would highly recommend going and checking out the movie. The movie's really good, pretty accurate, and Johnny Depp's just awesome in it. And now you're getting to see Jaw P. But yeah, it's definitely worth watching. And then once you're into that, then I say go check out Bride of the Monster. Start there. And I gotta get ready to head out. It's about time for me to go to work. I'm hoping, I'm keeping my fingers crossed that there's some reason that we're down on like the town square or some of the actual sets. That would be funny if that happened, because I was just telling somebody yesterday, I think I was telling Vern Wood or somebody. Yeah, I think it was Vern. I think I was telling him yesterday that I was like, yeah, I have a feeling at some point I'll end up on one of those lots here soon, and I'll end up getting like the good footage that I want just accidentally. Maybe today's the day. Cool, I just got my visitor's pass and it looks like I'm gonna be on New York Street. Stage 20, I'll have to look that up. Looks like stage 20, they filmed Airwolf, Harvey, and some of Psycho, and a bunch of episodes of Murder, She Wrote. James Stewart Avenue. What stage was that?
That was 21, 22, 23, and 24.
No, that was the Phantom of the Opera stage.
Yeah, exactly. That was just here Monday.
Oh,
Those
man.
started falling on Monday.
Oh, that was it. Oh, man. That's such a bummer. The history of that was so cool.
Pretty quick.
I'd love to have gone there in that stage.
Nintendo land there now.
Oh.
Trying to open up the amusement.
Losing stages.
Yeah.
I think it's Ted. Can't show you guys much, but I can show you some of the fake scenery. These are some of the New York streets. That's the Colonial House, and if I can show you anything at all, I'll pop them in here. The Park Terrace Hotel. I'm sure that was in something. We'll have to look it up, guys. All right, guys, I'm gonna call it a night. I hope you enjoyed this vlog. I hope you learned a lot about Ed Wood, and I hope you enjoyed the little mini tour that I was able to give you as we were driving through Universal Studios. They demolished Phantom of the Opera stage. Wah, wah. Until tomorrow, your old pal Jordan the Lion saying, have a good night.